Hey, it's Susan. In this video, I'm going to take you through the time-lapse process of painting this ink and watercolor sketch. So, fun fact about this photograph that I'm using for the sketch, it was taken by my mother-in-law while she was walking the Camino de Santiago. She went alone and she basically did this pilgrimage over the course of 5 weeks and took so many beautiful pictures of the Spanish countryside. And I took this one and decided it would be a wonderful way to practice perspective inside of our Paint With Me community. So this is the challenge that we're doing inside of the community this September. And it's also the challenge photo that I shared as part of our free monthly challenge in case you're not in the community. So I always share these time-lapse videos on YouTube because I feel like it's helpful, especially if you're not in the community and you're not following along with the actual instructional video. It still gives you a sense of how I chose to approach the sketch and the painting part of it. So the video might look kind of weird because it's not quite as fluid as if I was just painting this alone by myself without talking, but I'm actually giving instruction while I'm chatting and drawing, which means there's a little bit of pause and hand gestures, and that's where those are coming from if you start to notice those as I'm drawing. So that is why. It's because I'm actually talking in an instructional video and I turned it into a time lapse so that for anybody who's not in the community, perhaps you're watching this right now, it's a really nice way for you to sort of see my approach and what order I do things in. I know that that can be really helpful. It's helpful for me to see how other people approach their paintings, what process they go through, what comes first, what comes second, and just the order of things, and just to get a sense of the overall process. So hopefully this is helpful for you as well. And I wanted to share a few notes about how I think about perspective. So I think that it's pretty obvious here that when you're drawing something like this, that there isn't really a need, or perhaps there isn't even really a way to technically draw the perspective of this painting. So, or rather of this photo. So it's not like you can determine exactly the horizon line, to find all of your vanishing points and draw guidelines in order for you to create highly accurate perspective. And I think that, if you were to Google learning perspective or how do you figure out perspective, a lot of the results that come up, they appear very technical, and they have a lot of diagrams about 1 point, 2 point perspective, that there's vanishing points and that you have to find them in order to understand where your angles go. And I think that, that's all really valuable. Those are the foundational ideas of perspective. That helps us understand perspective. But technical terminology is only helpful, I believe, when it helps us understand the concept of perspective. Because for the purposes for us, and I'm saying us as in if you're here and you are wanting to do urban sketching or anything like this, just sketching from real life and maybe even trying to keep it as loose as possible, which is what I always like to do, then the technical terminology can actually have an adverse effect, especially if you're trying to learn and understand perspective. And then you feel this need that you have to really understand how to do it exactly, if that makes sense. So technical terminology, in summary, it's really helpful when it helps us understand the concepts, but not when it bogs us down with questions about how to exactly locate things like vanishing points. It can deter us from actually just drawing what we see. And I rarely personally label things in my head when I'm drawing like this, especially something that has perspective. I don't think about, where's the horizon line and let me find it, or let me locate those vanishing points so that I can then strike my lines at the right angles in order to create perspective. I rather instead think about things in relationship to each other. So it's a combination of observing visual and spatial relationships between elements that are actually on the page or in real life or in the photograph, and it's combined with an understanding of perspective. So to give you an example of what it sounds like in my head, it sounds something like this. I'll say to myself, this line is angled, and it's angled about this much tilted down from the horizontal of the page, or the parallel of the top of the page. So basically any horizontal line going across the page, this line is almost close to horizontal, or it's angled down this much, or it's angled down that much, or up that much. Another example would be the building edge, or this building corner, is about 1/3 of the way over from the left side of the picture, or the left side of my page. This tree is about as tall as the rooftop of that building. So it's very much just relationships of things to each other based on what I see. And when I first started taking people through this sketching and drawing method, basically what's going on in my head, and explaining it in words so that they could start to see the same things for themselves, I really thought that I sounded crazy, and I thought it sounded ridiculous. But so many people in my community told me that it was helpful, and I saw with my own eyes that they were able to produce really, really great drawings based on how I described it. And it might be that this visual method and relationship method of seeing things and comparing them to each other doesn't actually work for everyone. Maybe the best way for some people is to actually learn the technicalities of perspective and go and learn drafting. I mean, I learned drafting when I was in architecture school, and it was very helpful, but it's not the same tools that I use to draw, right? Drafting is a whole other world and has a different intent. It's very precise, and it needs to be. But for sketching like this, you don't need to be that technical or precise, but you do have to have an understanding of why lines go a certain way, just as a basis or a foundation. But after that, it's very, very visual. So if you happen to encounter perspective and you find yourself feeling as though you have to know exactly how to do perspective instead of just relying on your own intuition or the visual cues that you see with your own eyes, then I really hope that this video helps you today. So trust yourself and what you see with your own two eyes, not what you think you need to know using your brain. And finally, it goes without saying that if you're interested in joining the Paint With Me community to work on how to paint images like this, or just to understand more basics, or even just to have friends to encourage you on your artistic journey, you are more than welcome to join us inside of the Paint With Me community. I would love to have you, and we have a wonderful community of supportive and encouraging friends in there that are waiting for you to join as well if you'd like to come in and join us. Videos like this and past content and lessons are all there, and they're basically on demand because they're there for you, and they're saved. So even if you join in the future, this will still be there and you can access it. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Even if you aren't a part of the community, I'm just happy that I'm able to share things like this, and I hope that they help.